Feeling trapped in a stale 4-year relationship and reluctant to take the next step into marriage, Lee Jung-in stumbles into Yoo Ji-ho's pharmacy one morning, nursing a hangover after a night of drinking with her friend. As she tries to reassemble herself before going to work, Jung-in discovers that she has forgotten her wallet and cannot pay. Ji-ho kindly helps Jung-in, despite her prickly personality. What begins as an innocent daily interaction develops into a deeper attachment as the two find themselves drawn to one another. They embark on a secret friendship while navigating the minefield of familial and societal expectations. Before we get started, I do want to share some content warnings. The first one that I'll be talking more extensively about is the main couple does contain an emotional affair for like minor infidelity. Now, it is not, I wouldn't consider it blatant cheating, and you'll see what I mean when we get more into the story, but I know some people will probably be uncomfortable with that, and there might be some minor discussion of domestic abuse. While it doesn't contain the main couple, it is her sister, and it is in a side storyline, and I won't go into depth about it, but it could be mentioned. So if either of those things are something you guys are uncomfortable with, then it might be best to skip this one. I'll just catch you in the next one. So today's episode of Just Ranting will be covering my favorite K-drama. Well, at least my most rewatched K-drama. It is one of my favorite K-dramas, One Spring Night. Now, this show, honestly, I find it so cute, and it definitely sparked the obsession I have with Jung Hae-in. But it is also, it makes me so, I find the main couple so cute, but also I get so angry at like the people around them. But we'll get into it. I just want to preface this by saying I truly am so biased against this show because I love it so much. And I might be a little bit, I don't know how that'll portray into this episode of, I might be a little bit more erratic talking about it. I don't know. But let's start with like the basics and the foundation of who it is we will be discussing and the relationships they have with everybody. So the main female character is a woman called Lee Jung-in, and she has two sisters, and her dad is the principal of a high school. Well, I think it might be a prestigious high school, I'm not very sure, but they have a lot of expectations for her and just all of their children in terms of like how they present socially, if that makes any sense. They put a lot of importance on like reputation and that sort of thing. So she is also has a long-term boyfriend, Gisok, which is, I think his dad is the chairman of a college. Not 100% sure, but they have a their parents have her dad and his dad have a sort of like professional relationship, and it was kind of expected to see them get together, and at the point of their relationship, everybody around them is expecting them to get married. And Jung-in is just not there. And I don't know, I think before we ever get into the show, she has been kind of pulling away from this relationship and finding an out. They never were like deeply in love. I think they started dating because it was expected of them to start dating. So she is already kind of like not in their relationship at this point. And then we have the main male character, which is Ji-ho, who is a little bit younger than our female main character, and he works as a pharmacist. Now, the way that hold on, let me just say that he is a single dad. While his parents, for the most part, do raise his little boy, he's very involved in the kid's life, and the main reason he's not mainly raising him is because he can't afford a big enough space for him. He lives in a 1-bedroom apartment. So he's a single dad. The mother is not in the picture, but that is a big, I mean, it'll show more later as I talk, but it is a big issue for him in Korea society to be a single unmarried parent. He was his son was born out of wedlock. Like, it was a big, it's kind of like a scandalous thing, even though it shouldn't be. The man is the sweetest guy and his kid is amazing, but whatever. So how this ends up starting is Jung-in ends up drinking with her friend and coworker one night late into the night, and spends the night at her apartment. And she ends up a little bit late for work. She works as a librarian, and in a rush, she's like about to wait for an Uber, but she's like feeling really hungover, so she stops in at the local pharmacy where Gio is working. And she goes in, buys a hangover recovery like thing, a few like pills, that whole ordeal. So he like breaks it open, lets her drink it at the counter, and is like, she asks what's her total, and he says it was like $6, and she realizes that she has left her wallet. She has her purse, but she doesn't have her wallet, and it must be at her friend's place. So she's like super apologetic because she's already taken, like, she has drank this drink and the hangover remedy, and also taken these pills. So she's like, I am so sorry. Like, I will definitely pay you. Can I like wire you the money? Like, what is the way to do this? And he's like, it's fine. Because she's also trying to call her friend, and she's not picking up because she's still unconscious. And so he's like, it's fine, just go. And she's like, no, I like really am good for the money. I'll come by later. Like, I'll get you this cash. I'm really sorry. And he's like, obviously doesn't believe her. I think he might have believed this was intentional. She's like, why don't we just exchange numbers? And like, you're locked in, like, you have my contact information, and maybe you can send me your bank account number. Which in the US this might be weird, but it's like a routing number type deal. To send over money. It's not sharing any sensitive information. So she's like, let's exchange numbers. So they exchange numbers, and she leaves. And they kind of leave that interaction with an attraction to each other. Like, she obviously realizes, she's like, he was like really cute and sweet. And he definitely realized. Now she's stuck in a relationship, and this is a lot more confusing for her, but he is like, he obviously just likes her, or like has like a tiny crush on the customer that came into the pharmacy. So they leave that interaction. She immediately texts him and is like, what's your account number? And he doesn't respond. She ends up going past, I think, that evening, and just a little too late, and their pharmacy is closed. And so she can't stop in. She goes the next day and ends up catching him, and he's like, and she's like, why didn't you send me your bank account number? I asked for it. And he's like, I wanted to see you again. Cute. So she gives him the cash back. Oh, he also, when she left, in their first interaction, she left after exchanging numbers, and he ran out and gave her extra cash because she didn't have any for a taxi, and so it was like super sweet. So she gave him back all the money he lent her, and I think they were kind of like stuck in a weird conversation. Like, they didn't know where to take it, because I think it was kind of a mutual, oh, we have an attraction toward like this. I literally can't explain it without like you seeing it, but it's like they realize they have an attraction towards each other, they just don't know what to do with it, and so they're kind of awkward about it. But she basically gives the money and leaves and heads to her friend's place. At her friend's place, she is there, waiting there and getting drunk, because now her whole family is pushing for them to her and Gisok to marry. Like, it's basically her dad called her in and they had a dinner or something with her dad, and he was like, you need to set a marriage date for like this year. She's like, why can't I choose my own? Why can't I just get married when I want to get married? Why do I have to do it just because I'm of age now? Like, that doesn't feel right. So that's a whole other deal. But anyway, she's like, I need to get drunk now. So she goes to her friend's place, and she happens to like open the door because they ordered delivery, and opens the door to her friend's place, and it's Gio is like walking up the stairs, And she's like freaks out and like goes out into the hallway and closes the door, and she's like, "Did you follow me? Like, why are you here? I you can keep like the extra money I gave you, like the change. Like, what are you doing?" And then the delivery guy shows up, and he kind of just Gio just kind of walks away and upstairs. He lives in the same apartment as her friend does. He is the upstairs neighbor to her friend. So Jongin like realizes this and texts him, is like, "I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. Like, that's my bad." So that he ends up responding. She leaves, goes home. He ends up responding, "It's snowing. Get home safe." And she's like, "Thanks for the concern." And then he texts like, "Hey, the next time it snows, you should come by the pharmacy and we'll meet up." Obviously, they're obviously or he's obviously flirting. So she is like, "Well, why don't I round or just stop by the pharmacy now?" So he's like, "Oh, okay." So he sprints, because it's not that far, it's like around the corner, but he sprints back to work, opens up the pharmacy because he had already closed it. And they sit and have like a cup of coffee and have a discussion where he's basically like explains, "Hey, I don't know how to like navigate around this. I do," and then they both establish they probably need to tell each other something. Again, this is like their third meeting, but they're like the romantic tension is palpable. They have such good chemistry just being next to each other. It's insane. But so first Gio's like, "Oh, I need to tell you something." He's like, "I have a kid." And she's like, "So?" Or she's like, "Oh, you're married?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, what's the problem?" That doesn't make you like less of a person, which is honestly, you can see the surprise, which is so sad. He has to have such a negative reaction a lot of the time. But no, she's just like, "Whatever." And then she's like, "Oh no, I'm actually in a relationship." And she's like, and he's like, "That did pass my mind, but it still got me here." So they kind of establish like they can't have a romantic relationship. But Jongin is like, "Hey, why don't we be friends? Like, obviously we like would mesh well together. Why don't we be friends?" And he's like, "I'm not comfortable with that." He establishes, he's like, "I can like I like really like you as a woman. I don't, just friends is not possible, and I don't think it's a like appropriate relationship to have as friends when I know I feel more for you." He doesn't say all that, but that's basically the whole gist. And so she kind of just leaves, and that's where they leave it. Now, again, this is the first episode, but hopefully it should like, it's longer getting through it than most. I'll summarize a lot more later on, just because it's laying the basis down of their relationship. But so she just leaves without talking. The other issue is she ends up getting invited to Gisok, her current boyfriend's, like basketball game. He plays basketball with a bunch of his college alumni, and apparently Jiho is also an alumni of this college and plays basketball with all of these guys. So she shows up to this basketball game to see her current boyfriend, and Gio's there, and Gio sees her in the stand and kind of freezes on the court for one, and is like, "What is she doing here?" Like, and is like, they kind of just like stare at each other for a hot second, and till the game ends. And then Gisok obviously like approaches her. It was her and her sister who came, and he approaches her and is talking to his sister, and Jongin is just like still staring at Jiho across the court, and that's where the episode ends. I'll see you again after I watch a bit more. It gets very messy. Okay, I'm back. Honestly, I was gonna wait a little bit longer until something happened that just made my blood boil, so I've only watched about an episode and a half, or rewatched an episode and a half since getting back here. But let's get started with the whole basketball thing, because the episode 1 ends up with them meeting at the basketball game with university alumni. So Jiho, Jongin, Gisok, all of them, well, Jiho and Jongin are basically dragged to this freaking like big drinking thing with a bunch of the alum who were playing basketball and some friends. It was a big gathering, and Jongin was kind of dragged by her sister because her sister had her eyes on Gio. How uncomfortable is that? But whatever. So she's like, "Let's go. We need to go." And Gio was kind of standoffish when she realized, like, connected the dots of who Jongin's boyfriend was, and like the connection to the whole group. Anyway, so they go out. It's a little uncomfortable. They're all kind of gathered, Geo almost like tries to nonchalantly take care of Jongin. Like she ends up dropping her chopsticks at one point, and he prepares her new ones without like so much as looking at her in the face. He's sitting across from her, but then they go from drinking party to a separate party of Gisok, Jongin, Jiho, his two friends, and Jongin sister. They go to karaoke before Gio gets a call basically from his parents that his son Unu is in the hospital. So he runs out. He doesn't say that. He just says he tells his friends he tells his friends what's going on and runs out. And his friends just say that he had a family emergency because he doesn't really share that he has a son around. Because again, it's kind of looked down upon. But so he runs out. It was simple. Like it wasn't anything severe. He was just in overnight. Basically he had like a bad stomach ache is why he ended up there in the first place. And he was okay. But Jongin was worried. Like she kind of guessed what it might have been, but she never reached out to like ask him. And her excuse that she didn't text him was that he never responds to texts. So she goes to the pharmacy like a few days later, and they go out and meet up at a coffee shop to like talk. And he's like, you could have just texted me. And she's like, well, you don't respond to texts. And he says, well, you know why I don't respond to texts. It's an excuse to get you to come talk to me. So anyway, they have this whole thing, and he's like, it brings up the awkward thing because again, she's still in a relationship, like, and he's like, it's okay. I'm like, you don't have to act weird or uncomfortable. I'm kind of over it. He's not. He's just saying that. But he's like, I'm kind of over it. And she's like, well, if you're over it, we can be friends. And he's like, why do you want to be friends so much? But he does agree. And I like, it's said later, when her friend figures out what's happening, her friend basically is like, so you're only friends because you can't be anything else, which is literally the truth. Like they can't be in a relationship unless she breaks, or like a flirty relationship at the start, at the very least, until she breaks up with her boyfriend. And as of right now, she doesn't have any. Well, I think she does have the intention, or is at least stewing on the thought of breaking up with him, but that's not a reality yet. And so they have to stay friends. Is the only technically the way they can keep a relationship at all. So they agree to like text each other sometimes and just like keep in touch, basically. So after that, she ends up getting another call from Gisok, basically saying that her dad is pushing for their marriage again. Like, did you set a date yet? Type of pushing for. They're not even engaged. They weren't talking about it until recently, and they're not even technically fully engaged. But their parents are inserting themselves because this is a big deal. Her dad wants to be on the board for the college, I believe, and he thinks if I can get a marital tie to Isok's dad, I have an in, type of deal. So that's mainly the reason he's pushing for their marriage in the first place. So he basically, Gisok is like, hey, your dad called me about our marriage again. And she's like, I really don't want to, like, I don't want to get married just because we're being pushed to do that. I want to decide that for myself. And they kind of have a fight over the phone because he's like, well, I think they've been dating for like 8 years or something like that. And he's kind of at the point where like, well, we've been dating for long enough. Why not? But she's like, we aren't ready. She's not ready. And I think it's less of that. I think she's ready to be married. I don't know if she's ready to be married to him. And now she's questioning a lot, especially because Gio has entered her life. And she's re-questioning a lot of it because she was being complacent in her life until then, and then she got something that she was like actually liked and maybe made her actually happy. So now she's thinking, maybe I just shouldn't just go along with this stuff. So she doesn't say all that on the phone, but she's like, I don't want to be pushed into marriage just because it's time for us to get married. I want it because it's something we want. But she's like, I know that's probably, maybe that's like not something, or the way you think, that's just how I'm thinking. And so he comes over and they have an in-person chat about it. And she's basically just like, I think we need a break. And then he goes, do you want to break up? And she goes silent. She does not respond to that. I think he just here's the whole thing of like, he just thinks she's being has cold feet, isn't taking any of her concerns internally, and this is solidified by the fact that she says we need a break, and like a few days later he shows up with her with stress relieving vitamins and is like, here, this will solve all your problems. She is seriously questioning their relationship, is saying we need a break, we need time apart to see what we really want, and he's like, here's vitamins that'll fix everything and I can just it'll just be dealt with. So they go on a break. He doesn't see it as anything but like, a break is usually like few weeks, a couple months apart to evaluate their relationship and how you are apart and how you are together. Dude's just like, you had 2 days. You ready to get married now? Anyway, but I digress. So she and him are on a break. Then one day at work, she ends up, or Gio ends up texting her because he is off and spending his day with his son, and they were at like a park or something, and his son was playing on the playground, and so he decided to reach out through text because they haven't talked since the day they decided to be friends. And he's like, hey, how are you doing? She goes, oh, good, how are you doing? It must be your day off. I'm actually at work. And he goes, what do you mind asking me, or do you mind me asking what you're doing, what you do for work? She goes, I'm a librarian at this like library. And he's like, I'm gonna drop by with Unu because they have like a children's like section, well, like they have like a playroom for kids. It has a few smaller tables and then it's just kids books. And so she like starts freaking out, and Unu's really into dinosaurs, so she gets this text and immediately starts going to, I guess they're like they're repossessed books, or like, I don't know if they have like donated books. I don't know if she was like letting him borrow it, but it was like a back room of books, and I started looking for dinosaurs. They She ends up getting all these books for his son. They meet up. They don't really like talking much to each other except to hand the books over. And then they spend time in the children's library, and she's still working. But they head out, and her friend sees them speaking to each other and are like, and it kind of catches on. I was like, who's that guy? And Jongin just plays it off. Oh, he's like another alumni from Gisok's school. And her friend's like, huh. And I think it's later that day she happens to see Jiho in her apartment building, like going upstairs, and realizes he's her neighbor, and then realizes Jongin was asking about the upstairs neighbor who she admitted was attractive, and she also then makes the connection that he works at the pharmacy in the neighborhood, and figures out, oh, he was withholding information. So goes talk to her again, and Jongin's acting a little weird about it, and she realizes, oh, you have like feelings for him, and this is getting messy. So you know what? I don't want to know any more information. I don't know what you're getting yourself into. I don't want to know anything if I'm asked questions. And so she just kind of drops it after she realizes kind of the nature of the situation. And so that happens. And I think, and then it's the whole thing of the vitamins thing. I mentioned this before. Gisok goes to Gio's pharmacy to pick these up. And obviously Gio has to like act respectful and is very uncomfortable because this guy is the boyfriend to the girl he likes. Like, this is really weird. But Jisok goes in and is like, hey, do you have any vitamins for like stress relief? Like, my girlfriend's been like really tied in a knot lately, like, you know how it is. So this is an extremely uncomfortable interaction, not to Gisok's knowledge, but so this whole thing goes on, and he goes and picks up Jongin, I think from work, and says like, take these, this will make you feel better. And then goes, and she recognizes the like name of the pharmacy or logo from the bag. She goes, why did you go there? And he goes, oh, I just, because it was somebody I knew. And then he like casually drops because Gio's friend told him about how the fact that he had a son and the mom left. She had actually, they were dating, and then she dropped, like she disappeared for 8 months, showed up again, and was pregnant. Like was basically like about to give birth, and he's like, they discussed like getting married and staying together to raise the kid. But after she gave birth, she like stuck around and lived in his parents' house for a little bit until one day she just left. And he went crazy looking for her until he found out that she had left the country and flew overseas. So he's just stuck. And I don't, he's kind of, it's been many years. I think Uno is 4 or 5. You can't quote me. I cannot guess kids' ages, but around that age. He's over it now, but it is definitely a sore spot. Anyway, Gisok was told this by Gio's friend that Gisok works with, and so he told Jongin like, "Oh, did you know he had a kid?" And then he goes, "Yeah, that like really sucks." And she goes, "What's the big deal?" And he goes, "Well, now women are never gonna really want him. You're gonna have to date like other single parents." And she goes, "Why would he have to limit himself like that?" And he goes, "Well," and I quote, this is what the quote that made me so angry that I had to come here and talk about it. "Well, you don't want to be the only flawed one in the relationship." Excuse me? This is why I hate this man so much. He's such an asshole. So now obviously he isn't the only one who thinks like that, but like to just, first of all, everybody's flawed. And him having a kid that once again, he couldn't control the fact that he's a single parent. It was the mom who left, or like Unu's biological mother who left. It wasn't his fault. He is being the responsible one, and like he's still around in his child's life, actively participating in raising him. Like, how insane, anyway. And that's not the craziest thing he says or does. I mean, it's a theme throughout the whole thing. He thinks Gio's less of a man for some reason because he's a dad, which also makes no freaking sense because in comparison, Gisok is a little tiny, insignificant human being to the man that freaking Gio is. Anyway, again, like I said, I get frustrated. This is such a cute story and storyline, but I get so frustrated with the people like around them. Anyway, that's kind of caught up to where I'm at again. I'll be back when I watch some more. Okay, so I'm back. I made it a bit farther this time. I made it about 2.5 episodes. So after the whole thing with Gisok sucking and just sucking, the next like big event that happens, I would say, is Jiho ends up going out to drink with not the friend that works with Gisok, but one of his friends is studying to do the civil service exam. So it was that friend. He goes out, and when his friend stops by the pharmacy, he's like, "Oh, I just saw Gisok's girlfriend, like by the bus stop or something like that. It looks like she was with a group of girls or something." So obviously Gio gets like curious, but they go out to drink and eat, and on his way home, he sees Jongin at like this restaurant with a bunch of her coworkers. So he decides to call her. And now again, he's a little bit drunk. He had drank. I think that has some to do with what's happening because he calls her and she comes out and goes across and sees him across the street. And he goes, "Sorry to disturb you. I just wanted to hear your voice." So this is the moment it kind of breaks the whole illusion of like the friends thing, because she's like, he's like, "Sorry, I won't do this again if it makes you uncomfortable. Like, I know, like, I don't know, I know it's probably crossing the line. Like, I'll be better later." And she goes, "Sorry, I just realized I was playing with dice." It's like, and so you might be able to hear that. But she goes, like, "I don't know what's really crossing the line." And it kind of like hints at like, it's kind of the whole conversation of like, she liked that he called just to hear her voice, but that is like inherently wrong because she's in a relationship with a different guy. So that kind of like puts them in a weird spot almost of like, crap, they're stuck where they're at because of outside situations. Now, of course, it's her. She can break off a relationship, but it's not that easy for her because of her parents and like the expectations that they have for her relationship. So it's really hard to choose just what to do for herself because obviously she isn't happy. Um, but anyway, so he ends up leaving and they separate, and he's like really mulling over the status of the relationship and like how much he does like her. And you kind of give an insight of like, this is the first time he has really felt something for somebody else since Unu's mom left. And he's really, I don't know how to word it properly, but like this is a really important thing for him, and it's out of reach. Like it's taboo, whatever. Like he can't do anything about it. So he's really upset, or like it really sucks, especially much because of that. So he ends up going out with a friend, um, the friend who works with Gisok, and confiding that basically he has a girl he's interested in. It just isn't gonna work out. And he ends up saying something during this like uh talk where he goes basically like, just this once, is it okay for me to be selfish and follow my heart and not be punished for it? And it's so sad because I think it's because of his past. He was completely abandoned by his previous ex and Unu's biological mother. So to him, he also, and everybody views him as being a single parent inherently like bad or wrong for some reason. So he has a lot of insecurities, and that right there is like I don't think he feels enough. I mean, there's obviously a bunch of different uh aspects of this that makes it messy. I keep using that word, but that's what it is. It's messy. Most of all, that she's in a relationship, but it also is just he doesn't have enough confidence in himself that he's good enough for her. So he has this conversation, and again, he's drinking, and he ends up going from there to the library where she works just to see her again. And they happen to catch a glimpse of each other, but before they're able to like approach each other, Gisok shows up. And luckily Jiho sees Gisok before Gisok sees Jiho, but Jiho gets the hell out of Dodge. But Jongin texts or contacts Jiho after she talks to Gisok once he shows up, like, hey, did you already leave? He's like, yeah, I saw him. And she makes the comment, you didn't have to leave, we weren't doing anything wrong. And he goes, or we weren't even basically we weren't even doing anything. And he goes, would you if I asked you to? Whoa. So again, he just breaks, he's like busting down the walls they put up around their like platonic relationship. And she kind of stumbles, is put on the spot, like completely understandable. But I think she's like, hey, why don't we talk in person? And he's like, if you come out and talk to me right now, there's like no going back. So she doesn't. She ends up getting in the car with Jisok, who came to pick her up, and they left and saw him like literally crossing the road on their way out of the parking lot. I mean, well, Gisok, I don't think paid attention. She did. So after that, it was kind of like a standstill. Like they had there's not really a timeline, but they kind of stopped contacting one another. One, because I think Gio realized he like overstepped quite a bit, and Jongin like didn't know what to do. She was figuring out her own feelings because I think she was ready to step out and go meet Jiho, but Gisok was just right there. And so she's contemplating a lot about her own relationship. It was until I think I mentioned that like Gisok went and got her a bunch of like vitamins or whatever from this pharmacy. Her sister ended up eating a lot. She used that as an excuse to go meet with him. And so she texts him. He happened to be out at like the basketball. I think they do this monthly. So he's literally out drinking with. It seems like he drinks a lot. I swear he doesn't. Like I'm just skipping a lot of like in between. And apparently all the important moments just happen when he happens to be drinking. I swear he's not like an alcoholic. But so he's out drinking with the basketball group that he plays with, which is also Gisok. But when he gets this text, and dude books it out of there and goes and opens the pharmacy that was already closed to talk to her. So she shows up, and they're having like, it's kind of, they hold off for a while, or like it kind of dance around like their previous conversation until she gets a call from Gisok, who is at this freaking dinner basically saying they are already getting married. Again, she had asked for a break to talk about from their relationship, and they weren't talking about marriage because of like the state they were in, and he's just telling them that they're friggin' whatever. It's anyway, so that's what a thing that's going on. She like takes the call in like the back room of the pharmacy because there's construction going outside. And he's like, "Hey, can I come over later?" And she's like, "No, it's not a good idea." And Gio comes back and basically gives her a note, like writes on a sticky note, like, "Tell him to come over, I'll drive you home." And she goes out and they kind of get in a fight almost of like, why can't they just be friends? But obviously they can't just be friends because obviously they both have feelings for each other. And then, but that like a lot of it is the responsibility of Jungin because she's the one in a relationship, and it's like kind of back and forth. And it gets a little tense until Jiho keeps trying to say something, and then a freaking jackhammer goes on. He goes like "I," and a jackhammer starts. And he tries to say something like 5 different times until both of them just like break down laughing, and they get in a car and like continue the conversation. And basically, it's like, "Hey, you need." He's like begging her practically to work with him because he's like, "I will try and be just your friend, but you need to work with me in like it." It's almost a way of like, I'll indulge privately. I won't let you see me have feelings. And she's like, but, and then she's like, okay, but that, what am I supposed to do? Because I also am stuck with my own feelings. And now I can't indulge with, like, so it's kind of like a back and forth, and they're just still stuck. This conversation happens a few times over time in a few different instances, and they're always stuck around to the same thing as like, they can't do anything about it until she finally admits to her friend. She's like, I'm gonna break up with Yusok. She finally decides that like that's the best thing to do. The issue is every time she tries to contact him and meet up with him to do it, he's busy, and I think it's intentional. I think he knows what's happening and he just doesn't want to face it. So he skirts around that issue until, but she doesn't tell Jiho anything. They meet one night again, and he ends up being like getting caught outside her place, dropping her off at home by her sister who stays with her. And she's friends with his friend who's taking the civil service exam. And she's like, hey, we were gonna drink, join us. So she invites Gio up into their apartment, and they're stuck together again after they had just like this emotional conversation about how they like can't break any like boundaries, whatever. Well, actually, but she's kind of hinting at basically she's being selfish or in her own right of like she's deciding to be with him, but she's not directly saying that she's breaking up with her ex, so it's kind of just like throwing Gio through the ringer. But I say ex, her current boyfriend Jisuk, and it's until like they're stuck in the apartment together, and her sister and his friend go to get drinks and leave them alone in the apartment together, that Jisoo calls Jongin and is like, hey, you said you wanted to talk, like, and she just goes, this is the end of episode 5 and the last scene I watched. Let's break up. Staring Jiho dead in the eyes. Like, this woman is so bold. Again and again, like I get, I think I would be a lot more hesitant of like rooting for Jiho and Jongin to get together if Jisok just didn't suck so much. Like, and it's not even, and I mean, and that I didn't love like Jiho so much either. Like, he's so sweet, but part of it is I've watched this before. I've already grown a severe resentment towards Gisok, but so it's just a little to you as like if you haven't watched this drama before, you might not get it yet, but truly this man is awful. And I think even now you get a little bit of a taste of like he completely disregards her feelings. Now that's not to say that like cheating is okay, but I really don't like emotional cheating. And yes, they indulge once in a while to meet up, and they tried to go under the guise of like platonic relationship, even though that was like they were lying to themselves basically. But is you can't really be mad at them. I mean, you might. I can't. I can't really be mad at them. Anyway, that's where we left off. That's where I left off. Um, I'll come back when I've had more to tell. Okay. So honestly, we got to a really cute moment, and I think it was a good place to keep give you guys an update. So I got into episode 9. We left off episode. I just finished episode 5. I think last most episodes I've finished so far. But we left off with her breaking up. She broke up with Gisok over the phone. So she does that over the phone, and he obviously is taken by surprise. And is like, "What are you talking about?" Like, hey, and this is also when it's revealed. Apparently, he's tried to break up with her a bunch of times before, and she's always taken him back. So anyway, so he's like, "I know, like, I used to do this all the time. You know, it's just your turn. Like, we'll fix this. Like, let's work this out." He goes, "No, like, we're breaking up." And he doesn't take no for an answer. Which, to be over the phone, I get. Like, though she was trying to do this in person, and he was dodging her. But, um, anyway, so they hang up, and she talks to, or she called Gio had left, in the middle of the conversation, and so she goes and gets him and calls him back in, and they talk a little bit, and he basically reveals that he's like, the woman I like is breaking up with her boyfriend, but I can't be happy about it because then that's like he feels almost at fault, and she like tells him like, no, it's not all your fault. Like this was a long time coming before you were in the picture. It just kind of like sped up the process, but he still feels really bad because she's still going through it. Like that's kind of how his own feelings were complicated to himself. Like he explains that he doesn't even know why he's feeling the way he does. So that happens. Then her sister and the friend comes back, and they're having like a small like dinner and drinks, just and chatting, when freaking Gisok shows up at her apartment. So she tells her sister, "Hey, no matter what, stay in here and keep them occupied." So she goes out to talk to him, and he's still like, "Hey, we can fix this," and she's like, "No, we can't. We don't respect each other anymore." She keeps saying that, which is true. He has lost interest in like he placates her emotions, if that makes any sense, or like he basically just tries to gloss over everything or all of her concerns in terms of their relationship, and she's lost respect for him because of that, and that now she's has feelings for another guy. So she's like, we have lost respect for each other in this relationship. There's no point in continuing it, and he won't let it go. And they're starting to get angry. He physically grabs her when she tries to go back inside at one point, and that's when there's like commotion like on the door. And so her sister gets up and walks out, ends up kicking one of the guy's shoes out, and then that's when it's revealed that, do you have somebody over type of deal. Jongin kind of just is like plays it off as it's her sister's guess, because they're trying to cover it up as much as they can in terms of that, because there's so much connected, and they want the least blowout possible. But even though people are eventually going to know if they do start dating that might have been something going on while her and Gisok were still together, but they were trying to minimize that damage for now. So Jongin just goes, "Oh, my sister's, it's my sister's guess, but you need to leave." So that's kind of how that is glossed over. First, it's and it ends up. So they go back inside, and the two guys leave because now it's kind of awkward after that whole ordeal. And it's a few days later, Gio shows up at the bank Isok works at because his friend called for something. And they end up meeting Isok outside, And he said, again, he has the audacity to go, "Oh, I'm meeting up with my girlfriend." Fully, at this point, fully broken up. And no, he was going to ambush her. They weren't going to meet. He was just going to show up. So he says that, but as he's about to leave, I'm going to tell you this. It's not really shown. I think he catches a glimpse of Gio's shoes and recognizes them from Gio's apartment, or not Gio's, Jungin's apartment. So he's like, actually, can I join you guys for drinks? Both of them are like, okay. Gio is, he doesn't. I think he thinks Kisok might have like some suspicion, but he doesn't know for sure. So they go out for drinks, and Gisok is acting like super freaking weird the whole night until he finally says, "Hey, a few nights ago," and Gio just jumps in and is like, "Yeah, it was me at the apartment." And he's like, "It was my friend and her sister are friends. I ended up just being dragged along, type of deal." And here's what makes me both. I think it both makes Jiho irrevocably angry and me, because he laughs in Jio's face and he goes, "I was thinking she was seeing somebody else, but like it could have. If it's just you, I have nothing to worry about." Laughs in his face. Now, it sounds weird because you're you're getting offended that he isn't even thinking of Gio as competition, even though obviously he is. But it's because he has a kid. Literally is the only reason. He's like, I can't see him as competition. I don't see him as an equal because he has a kid. And it is so, it makes me so angry. It makes Jiho angry. So anyway, this whole thing goes down, and I think one of the guys ends up contacting their other friend, basically saying, "Hey, your freaking friendship with her got us in this big awkward conversation with Jonghyun's boyfriend." So like and that makes it back to Jonghyun, who then is like, "Crap, so they're together right now. I need to do something." So she ends up calling Isok back to her apartment. The issue is she's doing that to relieve Jiho of the awkward conversation, except the problem is he takes that as, or Gisok takes that as, "Oh, we're back together now." Literally, it's all it takes. They don't have even a proper conversation during this whole time. She's basically she's stalling him until Gio can get the hell out of Dodge, and then wants him gone as soon as possible so she can contact Gio, but he takes it as, "Oh, we're back together. There's no other issues." Which I have. That whole thing happens. They, and then it's, Jongin is trying to, basically, I think at this point, trying to work a roundabout way to break up with Gisok, because she's realized he won't just take it at face value. Like, he won't leave her alone. So he starts going, I don't exactly agree with her method. I think it was, I get why she did it, because it's right, he doesn't leave her alone even after she tries to break up with him. But I think just basically telling him flat out, "Stop it," might have been more effective than what ends up happening. But she ends up going to his dad, who I said previously. Oh, and I also should correct, they've been together for 4 years at that point. I think I've said previously 8. They've only been together 4 years. And I've also said previously that it was both of their parents who wanted them together. It was just mostly her dad who put the pressure on their relationship. His parents don't really like her. So she sets up a meeting with his father because he was like wanting to talk to her, I think because they're trying to push for marriage. So she sets up a one-on-one meeting with his dad, Gisok's dad, without him there, and basically goes there just to say, "I'm not interested in marriage." And I think it was her way of maybe by saying that, she was hoping to make his parents like her less and put pressure on Gisok to break things off. It didn't work. Her speaking her mind like that actually made her dad like him, or like her more. Sorry, it made Gisok's dad like her more. But she tried, that was one of her attempts of like trying to break up with him, until later she ends up like in her quest to try like the process of breaking things off with Gisok, she's still communicating with Jiho, and they have a talk after the whole meeting, like the drink thing. Like she goes or uh Gisok and Jiho meet, figure out that they were at the apartment thing. They meet up after that and talk about things again. And it was a very in-depth conversation about like another like kind of where we're standing discussion. And he says it kind of ends with he'll wait for her as long as she needs. Like literally unconditionally, he'll wait until she's ready, which is so sweet. And I will. This is the first time they've ever had physical touch like whatsoever. They have kept distance. He hugs her here, and this is she fully showed up on his doorstep one day crying about like their situation, and he's like he made the mention that like I couldn't even hug you because of our situation. This is the first time he hugs her in this whole ordeal. And then we move on to Jiho meeting up with or going to Jongin's library with Unu again. Now, this wasn't an intended like meetup with Jongin. He knew she wasn't working that day, and this was actually the day that she went to meet Isok's dad. So she wasn't in the library at the time. But Unu had been really wanting to go back. And so they went to the library and happened to run into Jongin again. She ended up stopping by work afterwards. And as they were like, they ended up hanging out a bit, but Gisok texts her and says that he's on his way there, and she tells Jiho basically to go out the back door. Now, she didn't mean anything by it, but Jiho kind of, it gets upset and is like, I will be okay hiding like that. I will not hide my kid like that. I will not make my kid hide. I'm not subjecting him to that. Like, and I think he took it as more of she was embarrassed of Jiho being seen, or like of Unu, like Jiho being seen with Unu. It was a protection of him thing. She didn't want him to run into Gisok because he sucks. It wasn't in any way embarrassed of them. It was almost embarrassment of Gisok. But anyway, Jiho gets upset and walks out the front door with Jiho and runs into Gisok. And he goes and says, like, don't you know my girlfriend works here? And Jiho's like, yeah. Dude, I think is completely done with this man at this point. Like, he was laughed at in the face as a contender at all for Jongin. So he's completely done with this guy. And he also kind of blows off Jongin a lot, like, because they'll talk one-on-one at points, and Jiho will kind of like use that as an opportunity to guys like the state of their relationship or what Gisok is thinking of their relationship. And Gisok will basically be like, he doesn't say I don't love her or like long-term relationships, like it's kind of like the old you know how I saw a TikTok once of a girl talking about how like men just find women attractive. They never actually like women. That's the men who go like, oh, the old ball and chain. Like they don't truly love the women they're with. They just find them attractive, but then are like stick around. It's kind of how Gisok treats Jongin. Like he doesn't. She's just the person that's around for marriage. He doesn't really love her. So Gio's also picked up on those hints, and he knows that the relationship isn't good. So he's done at the point where he meets him outside the library. Then he goes, he doesn't say that he's in like he has some sort of separate relationship with Jongin, but he's like, we come here all the time. Yeah, I know Jongin works here, like, but they have a good selection of kids' books, whatever, and like leaves. Well, Gisok goes inside And Jongin is like crying because she feels bad for what just happened with Gio. And she literally takes one look at him and says, I'm sorry, and sprints past him into the parking lot trying to find Gio. She doesn't catch him, but like they catch the tail end of the car, and that is when Gisok ends up finding out, oh, apparently there is something going on here that I wasn't crazy thinking like he was acting weird that night. Like, and maybe I should have not underestimated him. So they separate ways. They kind of don't show the rest of that night. And it literally all the following days, all Jungin is worried about is Jiho and how he's reacting or how he'll react to like she told her sister that I'm afraid that when I call Jiho, he won't pick up. And I'm afraid when I call Gisok, he will. Like, because, and that's kind of like describing the state of both of the relationships. So she patches things up with Jiho. He like explains he's not angry really. I don't know. I think he comes to his own understanding that it's not really what Jungin meant, and all trying to limit the burden on each. They're trying to limit the burden on each other. Like both of them are when discussing the relationship, like post or like getting through the point that they're at. It's how do I make this less of a burden for you? Jongin worried about how Jiho is going to look like a homewrecker, basically, when they start dating after she breaks up with Gisok. And Jiho is worried about how Jongin is going to look when dating somebody with a kid already. And he's been worried about that since the beginning of like, if you're seen together with me, they're going to think what's wrong with you because why are you dating somebody who has something wrong with them? Which nothing is wrong with him. I feel so bad that that's like truly what he thinks of himself. But anyway, so yeah, it's kind of their like state is like trying not to hurt each other and minimize damage, in staying together and following their hearts. So they're meeting after Gio, after Gio approaches Jungin again after the whole library debacle, Jungin shows her like phone to him. And it's super sweet because she shows her phone case and she had put a little dinosaur sticker because Unu loves dinosaurs on her phone case. And it's less of like, it's more of what it represents, obviously. She's showing that she's not ashamed of Unu. Like, it's kind of like a thing. And Jiho breaks down in tears. He starts like tearing up. And it's just a really sweet moment. Now, after Gisok finds out, he ends up contacting Gio's friend who works at the bank with him, asking where Gio's apartment is. Okay, so this is the chain of communication between everybody in this show is insane. So first, Gisok texts the friend, Gio's friend, who works at the bank with him, for Gio's address. Gio happens to be with him and the guy who's working to take the civil service test. When he gets this text, Gio tells him, go ahead and send it. So Gisok pulls up to Gio's apartment building, and that's when Jongin's friend sees him there and then calls Jongin, like, hey, Gisok's here. Why? And Jongin guesses it's probably to talk to Gio. So she calls Gio and is like, hey, where are you? He's like, I'm on my way home. And then he goes, is this about Jiok? And he's like, she's like, you already know. And he's like, yeah, let me deal with it. We knew I was gonna have to talk to him at some point. Like, it's okay. You don't have to worry. I'll deal with it. And she goes, I really want, like, you shouldn't have to. He's like, it's fine. I do want to handle it. So they go, he goes and they decide to go to like a local park to talk. Oh, he also asks Gio, like, he's like, or sorry, Gio asks Jongin, do I have permission to tell him everything? And she's like, yeah. So they go to a local park and he basically lays it out. He's like, she was a customer at the pharmacy, like, we knew each other, we were friends. I asked her out, she told me no, and that she was in a relationship, and that uh, and then we stayed friends. But I have feelings for her, and that's kind of like the status of our relationship right now. And the basically the whole thing goes down as Kisuk tells Jongin, or sorry, Kisuk tells Geo that he's trying to prevent Jongin from making her life into chaos. And Geo's response is basically like, I'm really worried because I know one of us will cause a lot of trouble for her, and it won't be me. And Kisuk is like taken aback by like how brave Geo's being, and a lot of Geo tells him this is more for me than it was for Jongin or the state of our relationship, because you look down on me, and I shouldn't let you do that, because my son makes me stronger, and you need to know that, and you should be happy that didn't do anything worse. And he was like, what, were you planning on punching me? And he goes, no, I would have done worse. I should have made you get on your knees. Whoa. Now he meant in Korea, the highest sign of respect is to bow on your knees. And I was just like, whoa, because dude has been so rude in relation to Geo. Now, before he knew anything in relation to Jongin, like, he was awful to him, or in the way he thought about him. So I was like, dude's killing it. Like, Geo, that's sick. So they wrap that up, and so they separate ways, and Gisel goes straight to Jongin, and basically they get in the car. He drives off to friggin' nowhere, and basically tells her, we're gonna forget about this and just continue on. And she's like, no. It's literally never what I wanted. I tried to break up with you. It basically didn't stick. Like, this is not how this is gonna go. And he basically resorts to screaming at her that it's pity and not love. Like, she doesn't have any actual feelings for Geo. So he's still underestimating Geo, and he's underestimating Jungin's feelings. This man. So he's like, no, you don't have any actual feelings for him. You were just feeling pity. And she's like, no, okay, this is regardless of Geo and like how I feel about him, which I do like him, by the way. Our relationship is long done. Like, I haven't. The only thing I need to apologize for is staying with you and pretending when I truly have fallen out of love with you a long time ago. And she doesn't, and like, he just won't accept it, like, at all. And dude's getting so upset, and he literally says, I would have accepted it if it was anybody but him. If it was, so his ego. She literally tells, like, when they first broke up, she's like over the phone, when she first broke up with him, she's like, you can tell people that you broke up with me, that's fine, if it'll, like, make you feel better. She doesn't care about that. She's okay to be the bad person or not. But but he literally says, he's like, I would have accepted this if it was anybody but him. And this is proven by the fact that when Gio was talking to him before about their relationship, and they were talking about like falling out of love, Gisok has said, oh, if his partner ever cheated on him, he would like leave it. There's no point to the relationship. He is currently living that reality, but is not leaving the relationship because he thinks that the person she's leaving him for is lesser. His ego is hurt. That is why, oh my god, anyway. So he still doesn't drop it, and is still currently telling his dad that they're just waiting on him saying yes to their relationship. Oh my god. So that goes down. The cute ending that I was gonna say is in the whole aftermath of this, a lot of people have found out now about I keep saying relationship, they're still not dating. Like, they talk, but they're still waiting for her to wrap up her affairs with Kisok, and also her family is gonna lose its mind. Her dad's gonna lose his mind when she finds out they're broken up. So that's a whole other ordeal. But so his friends know about them now, and so does her two sisters, both of them. And but they're like kind of spending more time together. He does tell her like, hey, I know, like even if it was a long time coming, like breakups still hurt, like you can have as much time as you need. And she's like, basically, literally, I don't need any more time. So she calls him out, and they go to that coffee shop again, and they meet up and are talking, and he makes a comment of like how much he likes her or something like that. She goes, "You don't even know much about me." And he goes, "Well, what else do I need to know about you?" And she goes, "I have a problem." And she gets real serious. And he goes, "What's your problem?" And uh she's stays silent. She goes, "Real, like you can tell me like what's going on." And she goes, "I love you. I love you." And he kind of silently gets up and walks outside the coffee shop, and she follows him because she's confused. And the man's crying again. He starts tearing up. Like, obviously, it's happy tears. But I'm like, this guy is he's so sweet. Like, I don't. So that's where we left off. And I think in episode 9. But oh, I love, like, truly, at least they're like getting on the path. I say this as if I haven't watched it before. I'm telling you, I'm rewatching it. But that's why this is one of my favorites, because it makes you feel all those like nice feelings every time you watch it. Anyway, um, I'll come back to you because there's so much more that goes down. Like, it doesn't end with freaking Gisok is still not accepting their breakup, and it doesn't end with them just happily ever after and everything else disappears. There's a lot of else they have to get through, but it's just, I thought it was end it on a good note this time. So I'll be back once I get further into my rewatch. Ooh, buckle up everybody, because I finished my rewatch, so we can finish this video. Let's get started. I left off with them, with Jongin telling Jiho that she loves him. Cutesy. Now I wish we could stay on the cute side. They do pretty much. They're together now. It's just the outside issues they have to deal with. So she ends up telling her parents that she's decided to break up with Isok and break it off. Now, she had no intentions of telling them about Jiho, or the fact that he's a single father. She she didn't tell him all of it, but she did tell her parents that she was interested in somebody else. Her mom kind of already knew about the whole situation. Her dad threw in absolute fit like a child. You can't. It's stupid to think that you're looking for somebody for. What else do you need? Like, who would be better than Gisok? Like, I don't understand. And then she's like, she said she wanted somebody warm-hearted. And he's like, that's stupid. You can ask anybody on the street, and uh, nobody will agree with you that that's like how you should choose from literally every. This is not actually, I was gonna say the 1920s, but it's even before that, the freaking 1800s. I don't know, like where you had to choose who you marry based on reputation. Like, that's not to build your social reputation. That's not a thing. I mean, it still happens, but literally a majority of the people marry for love nowadays. I don't understand what he was trying to get out of there. Anyway, she's like, well, what if I did find somebody? What if I did find somebody who wanted to marry for love? And then what would you say? So that's kind of how that happened. She revealed that she was already talking and like somebody else. But so it goes from that. Dad's not happy, and it's basically already. He's just like, this is literally how women are seen as like their emotions don't matter and what they say don't matter, because she'll get over it. Kind of how that thing is going. She's like, oh, you know how she is, like she'll be over it in a few weeks, like just like bear with her. And that's part of the problem with Gisok in like what's coming up, is he's being enabled by everybody around him, because his freaking Jongin's dad is telling him, or that like, oh, like please just bear with her, I'm so sorry she's acting like this, like, you know, you're the one for her, because he has an ulterior motives to get a freaking position past retirement, whatever. And then his dad is like, hey, like let her have her fun and wait until she comes back to you. Like, it's insane. So anyway, that happens. And then they go on, Jungin and Jiho go on their like first date, and it's super cute, like them spending time together, whatever. The issue is they go to a place where Gisok's friend apparently plays music, and he recognizes Jongin and calls Gisok. Now, it was not his fault. He had the best intentions in mind. He's like, hey, your girlfriend's cheating on you. They're broken up. He does not, because he's not telling anybody they broke up either, by the way. He fully thinks that she's just crazy and is going to come back to him at some point. Like, this is a lapse in judgment for her, whatever. So he shows up to the restaurant and confronts them as they're leaving. So there's kind of like a little scuffle. Basically, just go a back and forth of like, he's saying, why are you choosing him? They're having a tantrum. So they go that, and Gio kind of explains that I think he's kind of making himself be more of a bad guy than he is, almost as a target for Gisok's aggravation, because he's trying to be considerate. He's like, he needs time to deal with this, which you're giving him too much grace, but whatever. So they try and he convinces Jongin to like kind of bear with it for a little bit. But it doesn't have, they can't do that forever, because the dude then starts going around to people in Jongin's life. He first approaches her sister, basically being like, hey, do you know that this is happening? Can you convince your sister to break up with this guy? Now, her sisters knew she was already like somebody. What they did not know is that he was a single father. Gi-sok was using this to his advantage. He started basically, well, he was threatening Jongin like, hey, do you want like the people in your life to know? And she doesn't, like, that's not a thing that she's ashamed of. But it's something that would bring a negative light to Gio, if that it makes any sense. So, and Gio wanted to tell people himself. It was his thing to tell. But so he approaches her sister, who already knew there was another guy in the first place, but tells her that the guy Jongin seeing is a single father. You know, and plays it off like, I don't want her to make the wrong choice. Like, you know, this is just a lapse in judgment. Like, this isn't how she's truly feeling. Like, hopefully you can talk sense into her. Except she's talking to the sister that is divorcing her husband because he's abusive and currently is pregnant. She talks to Jongin afterwards, and Jongin kind of like eases her fears, because she was thinking about herself as a single parent, and she was almost like reflecting like how society would look on her to him type of deal, because it was something she was struggling with now, and she almost was thinking of getting an abortion. But talking to Jongin eased some of the fears I think she had. She's like, maybe I can do this by myself, especially if he can do it and he seems happy. I mean, I see that it's like going to be really difficult, but maybe this is a possibility I can do for myself. So that was his first step. That was Gisok's first step, was approaching her sister. Then, and also he is freaking treating the friend Gio has at the bank like trash, is completely ignoring or like ostracizing him at work and stuff. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This guy isn't even involved. He is so insane. But then he starts using him later on, which is also like, okay, just because I think he's a tiny little ant of a man doesn't mean he isn't smart. I mean, none of what he does works, but he does know how to try and play the game, because a few of the things he does. So one, he goes to the sister, doesn't work. He contacts Jongin specifically. Well, he consistently does this. He shows up friggin' wherever he wants to, whenever, and he basically threatens her. She's at work and is like, she might have not been at work, but he's like, I'm gonna wait outside of your apartment until you show up. What? Okay. So she's like, okay, fine, and meets up with him. He takes them to the place where they apparently first met or something like that, and brings out a ring and fully proposes to her. And when she tries to give the ring box back, he won't let her, so she leaves with the ring. Now, issue is here, she did not tell Gio that this happened, but freaking Gisok goes into work the next day, all excited and acting as if, oh, everything is so happy and cool, because as if that, the man's delusional, as if that conversation he just had went well the day before. He's gone to work all happy. Jongin went home to tell his sister. She's like, I'm actually surprised. I wasn't even angry at him anymore. Truly, I was truly indifferent towards him. Like, I had no feelings towards this situation. It was just kind of like, I didn't really know what to do because I felt like she still holds some guilt, I think. So she didn't feel like it was right to throw the ring back in his face, but she's like, I don't feel really anything. So, but he goes to work the next day all excited, acting as if he's saying he proposed to her and acting as if it went well. So, Gio's friend calls him and is like, hey, I don't know what's happening, but this is how he's acting at work right now. And, Gio, props to him, dude, because he immediately knows that, like, that's not the situation that goes down. He says he trusts Jongin and he, like, completely does 100%. So, but he does call and set up a meeting with Gisok, and he tells him, hey, I was nice up until now. Like, it's been a few weeks probably post the restaurant incident. Like, he's like, I've been nice up until now for all of what you've been doing and meddling in. That's gonna stop. You need to leave her alone. Like, this is not how this should work out. Or how this is, you are making things harder for her, and that's not okay. I gave you basically your chance, so you need to stop now. And the dude goes, I'm not gonna stop until you stop. Excuse me? What do you mean? He's laying out, like, hey, we're in a relationship now, you need to stop meddling. Like, I gave you enough grace because technically I did invade into your relationship and I feel bad about that, but, like, you need to stop because you're causing her trouble. And dude's like, what? Aren't you embarrassed? Because it's not like her parents are gonna accept you with open arms. Dio pulls this line out. Well, all that matters is that Jongin accepted me. Dude, fire. Like, anyway, so that is that conversation that happens. Then freaking Gisok continues to cause issues because then he approaches um Jongin's friend, the one who lives in the same apartment building as Gio. Now, Jongin intercepts that, like she hears about it and ends up calling him to try and deal with it herself. She she does pulls a few things. I think she ends up uh talking to his dad a few more times, basically saying, hey, this isn't gonna happen no matter what. Or to Gisok's dad. And it was like, this is, I don't know, your son isn't listening to me, maybe you will, kind of thing. Like, this isn't gonna happen. And it just becomes more and more of an issue. Gisok's dad, at some point, ordered for, he's like this, again, the chairman of a college, I think, and ordered one of his men to start following his son at first. I don't know, the intention was never, like, fully explained, but he ends up telling him to start following Jongin. So he has pictures of Jongin and Gio together and Unu. And it might have been, he gave it the pictures to his son, I think more as an indication he's finally like, maybe you should drop this. But it's just, Jude doesn't let it go even then, but these pictures now exist. And the next thing that happens is the pictures get dropped off into Jongin's dad's, like, mailbox, which it's pictures of Gio with Unu, and so it's basically like pointing out that he's a single father and that Jongin and him are dating. So he explodes, loses his mind, ends up, Jongin goes and is talking to him and is like, no, this is unacceptable, like, how could you do this? He's a stand-up guy staying around and raising his child. I don't understand. And he's more of a man than any of the freaking guys involved in the show, like, who were contesting a relationship. I have to say that for one. So he takes more responsibility for his life than any of them. But whatever. So he blows up on Jongin. And Jongin is keeps Gio out of it, or like his dad is like, or her dad is like, bring him here. I want to meet him. And she's like, no, because all you're gonna do is try and humiliate him, and I'm not gonna let that happen. But so that goes down, and Gio feels really bad because their relationship is causing strain with her parents. And no, the parents are causing strain with her. That's not anything. It's got nothing to do with him. But so that ends up going down. But it's soon after this happens that Jongin ends up. Well, Jongin goes to Gi-seok's dad's and says, like, those pictures you took, I don't like, thank you for sending them to my dad, because it told it, like, I wanted to tell him the truth anyway. I mean, like, I wanted Gio to tell him in person, but whatever, got it out of the way. But I would like the pictures back because I feel uncomfortable that you have any of them. Those were illegal and you shouldn't have taken them. And then she finally was able to get the engagement ring back to Gi-seok. And after that whole exchange, it's not really important about what the fight was over, but Jiho and Jongin end up having like a fight, a little bit of one, and on the tail end of that, after Jongin is coming home, Gi-seok was waiting for her at her apartment. Again, dude is creepy, and catches on that something is wrong. So goes into work next day, does the same thing he did with the proposal, plants seeds of like, oh, he knew that there's like contention in their relationship, like, oh, it's only possible that Jongin could have told him this stuff, so why was Jongin meeting with him, type of deal, whatever. Again, this gets back to Gio because of his friend at the bank, but Gio has no concerns over the fact that Jongin, or that Gi-seok knew about this, but he does go and talk with Gi-seok again. He's like, dude, I already warned you once. This conversation has already been had. You need to back off. And he says, this isn't a warning anymore, it is a threat. Because you know those pictures you took illegally of me and my son? Yeah, I can do something about that. So you need to stop bringing her into this and running to her and like causing her issues, or we're gonna have a problem. I'm going after your dad for the pictures he took. So you need to deal with it. Now, this doesn't truly stop him, because all he starts doing is then he goes from that, Gi-seok goes from that conversation to her parents' place and ends up telling her mom that, oh yeah, Gio like threatened me. His mom doesn't believe this, but insanity. I think how this basically fizzles out is when his dad starts saying like, hey, just let it go. I think he finally realizes, maybe I don't have standing here, and maybe I am batshit crazy. Like, so, and he finally kind of relents, I think, in his actions, and ends up deciding to go on an arranged date. And that's kind of how his storyline ends. But it's because he even admits at one point to Gio in one of these conversations, he basically says he has no intention of getting back together with Jongin. He just doesn't want to lose. He can't give up until there's a winner, but he's not doing it because he cares for Jongin, which everybody knew, like that was already established. He just didn't want to lose to Gio because he sees him as less of a human being. Which, when again, I think I called him an ant earlier. I meant that. The man is an ant. I could step on him. Anyway, he gets me so upset. But anyway, he kind of just fills us out. Like that's and the whole thing with her dad. And when I said I was gonna get into this, and I guess I'll get into it a little bit. This man, I don't think he never really did anything illegal, but I feel like he still should be in prison, because he ends up when one of his other daughters, it's revealed that she has been abused for years, and she tries to divorce her husband. The husband goes to the dad, whines to her dad, saying, oh, I was drunk one night and I got a little physical, like I feel awful, what? Doesn't apologize to her. He's like, I'm so sorry to her father. And Now her mom knew all about this. She the daughter had been keeping a binder of all of her like injuries and stuff like that as to use in court against him if she ever decided to do that. And her mom found it. And you know how normal people act when their loved one is being abused? Yeah, her mom went to the freaking dentist office he works at and beat her with and beat him with her purse. That's normal behavior. Not the dude went and cried to dad, and dad, all he did was call them all in for a meeting and he said sorry. You need to like accept, like, you can't, this is a marriage, like you can't just like let it all go. What? And he's like, I want more than anything to like hit him right now, but that's not how we should handle this. Excuse me? And you know when her freaking sister found out, not Jongin, the other sister, the youngest sister, she also beat the dude out of the freaking apartment when she found out, and cried and hugged her sister because of what she was going through. So anyway, this man is insignificant and sucks. And he technically didn't do anything illegal except maybe, you know what? Would it be considered aiding the crime? That, yeah, maybe. I don't know. But oh my God, he gets under my skin, and they still do give like kind of, they don't give him a full redemption arc, but they're still kind of like everybody's still trying to keep a relationship with him, which I can never understand. I'm not fully sure. Her mom, after this whole situation goes on, like their mom basically is like, I'm gonna divorce your dad, after seeing how he reacted to that whole situation. And yeah, I don't know if in the course of the show she never goes through with it, and I think that she might have walked back that thought process, but oh, I wish she did. That man deserves nothing. But that's the kind of guy he is. So, but he ends up, I think they kind of, he never accepts it, but he kind of just like doesn't acknowledge it. I think it's kind of that situation, because all of his sisters, or sorry, not sisters, all of his daughters in his eyes are disappointments, because one is going to be a divorced single mother, the other one's dating a single dad, his one daughter is I think she made a mistake like in college maybe, and they haven't really regarded her since. Like, I don't even know, but she kind of travels around a lot and it's kind of like boyfriend hops, I think, a bit, and so she's always been like the disappointment child or whatever. But anyway, I will say, so after all the contention is done, well, some of this happens while this is unfolding, but I wanted to leave the happy stuff for the end. We do get a happy ending. Jongin and Geo take Uno out on a date one day, and it is the cutest thing. Now, I will say, in reality, this is not how this should go out. There should be like extensive conversation before something like this happens. But in the vacuum of like fiction, this is really cute. So they go out one day, and also it's important, Geo has a picture of him and Uno on his bedside table. So they're in like a field of flowers type of thing, watching Uno play, and Jongin like shows him a picture they took like a selfie that day, all three of them together on her phone, and says, you should put this picture on your nightstand. And he kind of just like looks at it, and she goes, okay, first plan failed. Then she goes up and goes to Uno, whispers something in his ear, and Uno comes back and runs back to Geo, and it goes, Miss Lee asked me if she wants, or sorry, Miss Lee asked me if I want her to be my mom. And Gio's like, well, what would you say? And he goes, yeah. And so that was her proposal. She was proposing like marriage. And it was so cute. Again, not how that conversation should be. Like, there should be extensive conversation, especially with a child involved, of like how she should be addressed and how she should integrate themselves or herself into their lives, whatever. But in the fiction vacuum, that is really sweet. So she proposes like that. And then her mom asks to meet him, and he says, I should bring Uno, because he's an extension of me, and if she wants to meet all of me, then he should come too. So they all meet together. It's the three sisters. It's the sisters and mom. Dad's not involved. Uno, and then Geo, who all go out for like lunch. And it's a really sweet like thing. It's really endearing. The one sister asks for some advice in being a single parent, because that's something she's navigating now, and she says she'll probably be reaching out a lot to Gio in the future for more advice. And while we don't get a full closure on everything, not like, oh, and then Jungin does meet his parents, then it goes very well. That was never too much of an issue. His mom kind of worried more about what new society standards, and I think, of course, is a part of that older generation, but she wasn't looking down on her son. She knew that maybe the best relationship for him is somebody who has been through more maturing stuff, but she accepted Jungin really quickly. His dad especially did, because he found himself a new drinking buddy. But they, like, I do almost wish there was like a special episode where we see their wedding, or like an epilogue type of thing, because I think that would be really cute. Because the assumption is that they're gonna, with their joint incomes, move into a bigger house and have Uno move in with them, and live together as a family. But it's cute. So that is One Spring Night, my favorite K-drama. It's not one for everybody, I will say that. And as I'm talking about it, I realize like how much, I guess, there is true infidelity, and in the development of Gio and Jungin's relationship, but you can't, not you, I can't see it as that much of a big deal, especially with how much freaking Gisok sucks. Like, he just doesn't love, he stopped loving her. I don't know if he ever really did love her. Like, dude has always been in it to make a like a political relationship, something that just looks good publicly. I don't think, and once that was taken away from him, he was throwing a tantrum. Anyway, I did skip a lot of, like, seeing them together is really sweet. I did skip a lot of their like happy moments together and stuff like that. So if you do want to watch it, it's on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's anywhere else, but I'll link the my drama list in below my drama list page, so you can go look into it yourself if you're interested in watching it. But that's it for this episode. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. There might be minor discussion of domestic violence, if that's something you're not comfortable. Bella! And they have a lot of expectations for her, just in like, just in terms of Bella. And so he like has that vulnerable moment, and I think it's after that where he's a little bit more inebriated, where he then